I think we all agree, Mr. Cuellar. Sheriff Rutherford.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner, I presume that CBP has either general orders or SOPs or training manuals for how to vet individuals that they run across. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I would like the request through the chair, if we could. I'd like to see those documents, the training that they get, the processes that they're supposed to go through. And I'm going to tell you why. And it goes back to the questioning that Ms. Henson had earlier as well. And I keep bringing this case up. My question is, so we have an individual who crosses the border, no ID. We go to vet them. They're not in the biometric system. They have no documents. We have no way of knowing who they are. What is the default policy of CBP with an individual like that?
So there'd be a number of questions I'd have to ask. Number one, certainly, just like you said, we would do the biometric, biographic checks, and certainly if it's a minor or
They go to HHS,
they go to
and they go
HHS.
through the same vetting
Right.
process. Here's my question, because the individual that Ms. Henson spoke of was later determined somehow through vetting to be on the terrorist watch list. Mr. Ulloa, who went to Jacksonville, Florida, and killed one of my citizens, one of my constituents, he actually came across and used a fake name and fake ID. Not a fake ID, just a fake name and fake date of birth that made him a juvenile. CBP couldn't tell who he was. So but since he used a date of birth that made him a juvenile, they turned him over to HHS. HHS couldn't tell who he was. So they sent him to Jacksonville because he's got a relative there, allegedly, who turns out not to be a relative, because they didn't vet him either. He murders my constituent. Then we find out who he is. How did we not? So here's my question: If he can go into the Duval County Jail and eventually we can identify who he is, how did we not identify who he was before we shipped him to Jacksonville? So my question is the default policy of CBP, if you can't tell who they are, let them in? Because that's what it appears to be.
No, sir, that is not the default policy. Again, I've spent my career trying to increase information sharing, vet individuals against all available databases, whether they're IC-held databases, LE-held databases.
I know, and we're doing all we can in that regard. But when you can't tell who they are, what do we do with them?
So in the case of a minor, we're mandated by the TV.
You don't know that he's a minor.
Well, they claim to be, so I'm just telling you, we have to follow the law too, which is a TVPRA, and we have to turn the minor over to Health and Human Services. And as discussed at length,
But there's my question. How do you know he's a minor?
we have to use all available information that we have, and we have to make that determination.
So we take whatever they tell us, and we're making decisions about the security of this country based on what somebody that just illegally crossed the border is telling us. I have serious problems with the way we are vetting people. And the fact that we can't tell who they are at the border, yet when he gets arrested in Duval County, we find out who he is. He's doing 60 years now. Why couldn't we determine that before they sent him to Jacksonville? Why couldn't we determine that? What changed? How did they determine who he was later?
Again, sir, first of all, my condolences to the family and your community.
Look, I understand completely, and I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying, it looks like the default policy is to let them in. But why wouldn't we say, no, I can't prove who you are, so you're not coming in? Why wouldn't should that not be our policy, or is that our policy?
Well, again, when somebody comes in, we're going to use all the available information that we have through the biometrics, to the facial comparison.
You can't tell who they are because they're not in any system. What do we do with them?
And so we're going to
We're
coordinate.
letting them in.
Well, we're going to coordinate as
Aren't we?
appropriate.
We're letting them in. We need to look at that policy because we're letting killers into this country. That's got to stop. I yield back.
Thank you, sir.